Well, hello. We have today just this incredibly fun story. You are not even going to believe it. It has so many twists and turns. So there was a guy, his name was Naaman. He was a soldier, he was a general. He worked for the king of Aram. And he was really a good soldier. He won all kinds of victories, including some victories against God's people, Israel. And on one of the times where the Aramites made war against Israel, they took a bunch of people to be slaves, people who have to work and don't have any choice about it. They took a bunch of people to be slaves, including a little girl. And one of these little girls wound up being the slave of Mrs. Naaman. Of Naaman's wife. And it happened that Naaman got sick. He got sick with a disease called leprosy, which was a terribly bad disease because when you had leprosy, people wouldn't talk to you, they wouldn't be with you, they wouldn't do business with you. You were all on your own, alone. It was terrible. So Naaman got leprosy. His wife was one day talking to this little girl, this little Israelite girl who was her slave, and the little girl said, if only the master was in Israel. There's a prophet there who could heal him. He lives in Samaria. Well, the wife got very excited to hear this. She went and told Naaman. Naaman went and told the king of Aram, there's a prophet in Samaria who can heal me. What do you say? The king of Aram said, absolutely, you should go there, you should get healed. Hang on, I'll write a letter to the king of Israel, I'll send some gifts, the king of Israel will introduce you to the prophet, everything will be grand. So the king of Aram wrote a letter to the king of Israel. This is my servant Naaman, I want you to heal him of his leprosy, and here's a gift. And he sent, you're going to be amazed at this, 10 laundry baskets full of silver. More than 755 pounds of silver, more than 150 pounds of gold, and 10 of the fanciest outfits you have ever seen. Sent those with Naaman. Naaman got a couple of carts and a bunch of servants, and they put all of the silver and all of the gold and all of the outfits into the carts, and they went to see the king of Israel. And when they got to the king of Israel, they gave him the letter, this is my servant Naaman, please heal him of his leprosy. The king of Israel panicked. He didn't know how to cure anybody of leprosy. He got so scared, he tore his clothes. In that day, if you were just scared, or sad, you would tear your clothes so everyone would know. He tore his clothes and he said, the king of Aram is trying to start a war with me. Am I God? Can I cure someone of leprosy? No. Why does he send this servant to me to cure of leprosy? I can't do it. Now, Elisha heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes. Elisha was one of God's prophets. Remember, a prophet is someone who listens to God, talks to God, tells the people what God wants them to do and to not do. It's like God's ambassador in the world. And Elisha, the prophet, heard the king of Israel had torn his clothes. And he said, why have you torn your clothes? Send him to me. He apparently knew what was going on. So Naaman loaded up his silver and his gold and his 10 fancy outfits into his wagons and got all his servants in a parade, and they went to see Elisha. And they pulled up in front of Elisha's little house, all important, all grand, all noble, Naaman on his horse, his war horse. And he sent a servant to knock on the door. And there was a voice inside, what do you want? Well, the great Naaman is here to see Elisha, the prophet, and to be healed. Elisha didn't even bother to come out. He sent his servant out. His servant came out, and his servant said, the master says you should just go dip yourself in the Jordan River 7 times and you'll be healed. And then he went back into the house. Oh, Naaman was so mad. So mad. He thought it was so rude. I've come all this way. I'm a very important man. I'm a rich man. I have 755 pounds of silver here. I have 150 pounds of gold. I have all these outfits, and I was going to give them to Elisha, and he won't even come and talk to me. I wanted him to come out and call on the name of God. I wanted him to wave his hands over the spots so the spots would disappear. He did none of that. I'm out of here. I'm certainly not going to bathe in that dirty, muddy Jordan River. There's much nicer rivers back home. And he stormed off all mad. His servant said to him, Father, that's what they called him. Father, what? Can we talk to you for a second? What? This being mad thing doesn't make any sense to us. Oh, I told you, he should have come out. He didn't treat me with any respect. I'm not doing it. There's better rivers back home. And the servant said, but if he told you to do something really difficult, would you have done it? Well, sure. If he told you to climb a mountain, would you? Yes. If he told you to swim, yes. You would have done anything he said? Yes. Well, he told you to just go dip your body in the river 7 times. What's the matter with you? So Naaman calmed down and he went and he dipped his body in the river. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Still nothing better. Muddy and grumpy. Dipped himself that 7th time, and when he came up out of the river, totally healed. Totally clean. Can you imagine that? He went right back to Elisha's house. And this time Elisha came out of the house. And Naaman said to him, I know now that there's no God in the world except for your God. Every other God is pretend. And Elisha said, yep. And Naaman said, I would like to pay you 755 pounds of silver. I got 10 laundry baskets of silver here. I'd like to pay you a bunch of gold. I got 150 pounds of gold here, and I got 10 of the snazziest outfits you're ever going to see, so you can be the best dressed man in all of Samaria. And Elisha said, no, I don't want any of it. I'm not selling what God does. I don't want any of it. And Naaman said, please take it. And Elisha said, nope, please, nope, please, nope. And then Naaman said, okay, can I ask a favor? And Elisha said, sure. Can I have 2 wagonfuls of dirt? Isn't that a weird thing to ask? And Elisha said, yeah, you can have 2 wagonfuls of dirt. And Naaman said, when I get home, I'm going to build an altar to the real God. And I want to use this dirt from this place that the real God protects. And Elisha said, sounds like a plan. So Naaman loaded up the 2 wagonfuls of dirt and he headed off. Now, that's where the Sunday school people think we should end the lesson. But it's not really where the lesson ends. And I thought, you're probably big enough to learn the rest of the lesson. So there was another guy, Gehazi. Correct me if I'm wrong, you've never met anyone named Gehazi. You know why? Because he's a dope. Your parents, when they named you, didn't want to name you after a dope. So Gehazi was Elisha's servant, and Gehazi could not believe it that Elisha was going to let 755 pounds of silver and 100 pounds of gold, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 beautiful outfits go down the road and not take them. Gehazi thought, that's cuckoo birds. And so he waited till Elisha went back into the house and Naaman was a little way down the road with his wagons of dirt. And then he went running after Naaman and he said, Master, Master, Master. Naaman stopped the procession. Yes, what do you want? Gehazi said, I'm Gehazi. I work for Elisha. I wanted you to know that after you left, a couple of prophets came to Elisha's house. They're very poor and they're wearing rags. Maybe we could have 1 talent of silver and 2 of those beautiful outfits for those other guys. I could bring them back to them. You know what's happening here, right? Are there 2 visiting prophets? No. Gehazi wants the silver and the outfits for himself. And Naaman says, just 1 talent of silver, just 1 laundry basket of silver. Take 2. Gehazi says, oh, I really couldn't. Take 2. Gehazi says, okay. And he goes back with 2 laundry baskets of silver and 2 of the fanciest outfits you've ever seen. And he hides them. Later, he comes back into Elisha's house, and Elisha says, where you been? And Gehazi says, Nowhere. I've been here. And Elisha says, do you think that God didn't show me someone running down the road? Do you think God didn't show me someone talking to Naaman? Do you think God didn't show me someone coming back with silver and outfits? Can you imagine how scared Gehazi was? And Elisha said, because you have lied, because you have done this wicked thing, because you've dishonored God, Naaman's leprosy is now yours. And Gehazi looked, and he was covered with this disease. That's where the story ends in the Bible. Isn't that an interesting story? It's interesting to me because it reminds me that when we lie, when we do bad things, there's consequences. Usually not this big, but real consequences. That when we lie, when we say things that we know aren't true, when we want things that don't belong to us, people around us get hurt. People suffer. It breaks our connections with people, and it makes it difficult or impossible for people to trust us again. Gehazi's kicked out of society because he's got leprosy. But when I lie or when you lie, we're broken out of our communities because people can't trust us anymore. People don't know when we're telling the truth and when we're not. And so they don't listen very closely. We got all kinds of stuff to think about in this story. We got story about someone who doesn't really belong to God's people getting God's grace. That's who God is. God loves everyone. We have this incredible story about the king of Israel not understanding that he had a prophet in his own country who could do this, getting all wigged out when he didn't need to. Sometimes I get wigged out when I don't need to. How about you? Yeah, it happens. We have this amazing story of God being able to heal leprosy, and this simple thing that he asked Naaman to do, just go dip in the water 7 times. Do you think God needed Naaman to dip in the water, or that was just something for Naaman to do to practice being obedient to God? I think it was about practicing obedience. God was always going to heal him. When Naaman was obedient, he got healed. That's how that works. There's the beautiful thing about Naaman trying to pay for God's grace. You don't get to pay for God's grace. It's a free gift. And then again, we have that story about Gehazi. I don't know what you're going to draw for me. I don't know what you're going to paint for me, but I cannot wait to get it. Think about this story. Think about the love and the power of God. Think about how big God's love is, that it doesn't have any edges or any sides to it. It covers everybody. Think about the consequences of lying or cheating or stealing. And then figure out how you're going to teach this story in a painting or a poem or a drawing or a Lego creation, however you're going to do it, and send it in to me. I am so glad that we can still talk, that we can still share these stories. And I want you to remember that the God who healed Naaman, that God is alive and at work today for you. And I want you to remember the little servant girl that pointed all the adults in the right direction. She's someone that you can remember too, because your voice matters. Your prayers matter. Your words matter. I know you're little. I know you're young. You serve a mighty God, and he can do anything. Thanks for spending the time with me. I hope we can see one another soon. In the meantime, you have my love and my prayers. Bye-bye now.